Okay, welcome back. This is Michael Williams, and we are proceeding through our series, 21 Steps to Start Speaking More Smoothly and Confidently. And now we are looking at technique number 3. Technique number 3, but we're on step 8. Right? This is step 8, and we're on technique number 3. Now, this technique I want to spend maybe a few more minutes on. But this is critically important as the first technique. The second technique is important, but you can do it without the second technique. The third technique is critically important. Let me lay the groundwork for you. This third technique involves practice speaking or actualizing, that is, making it real. Practice speaking or actualizing your speaking ability. You want to practice speaking. Or actualizing, making it real. Practice speaking or actualizing your speaking ability. And I'm going to tell you how to do this. Some people, in fact, I've had many people actually say, well, your program is great if I have to do an interview or if I have to make a public presentation or a sales presentation, but it doesn't really work real well for everyday conversation, and it's not helping me right now necessarily, because I'm not able to say my name, or I'm not able to say certain letters, problem breathing, and so forth. So here's what I want to share with you for this technique. If you want to speak well, you have to speak more. Just remember, if you want to speak well, you have to speak more. And here's why. And I've explained this before, but I'll do it again here because it's very important, because in this technique, we're talking about practicing speaking, right? The vast majority of people, and I've said this before, don't stutter 100% of the time. So when is it that they don't stutter? Well, sometimes they don't stutter, or if it's public speaking anxiety, they don't have public speaking anxiety 100% of the time. It's when they're more confident, it's when they're more relaxed, when they're around certain people, or when they're alone, right? Those are times, or those can be times, when the person doesn't stutter, or they don't have a problem speaking, or if they're speaking to a small group of people that they know. So, if this is the case, then this means that they do in fact have the ability to speak fluently, to speak smoothly and confidently. They do have that ability. It's there. It's just that it doesn't always come out, right? It doesn't come out all the time. So, what we need to do is we need for you to start speaking more and more and more, right? Think about this as you're developing your speaking muscles, if you will. So the more you speak, and the more you speak fluently, the more your brain, as well as your body and the muscles that you actually use to speak, and your breathing, your abdomen, your lungs, and your chest, and your body, the more your body gets used to speaking fluently. So as your body gets used to speaking smoothly and fluently, even in a presentation setting, right, your body's getting used to it, your brain, those cells, those neurons are developing connections. The more you do it, the more the connections develop, the stronger they get, okay, until they are wired together, and now you have a permanent memory of you speaking fluently. Makes sense? So what we need to do is we need to create a series of past positive speaking experiences. Past or previous positive speaking experiences. The more of these you have, the more confident you'll be, and the more you'll speak smoothly, fluently, and confidently. It's a cycle that builds off of each other. The same way as the more a person messes up, or the more they stutter, the more they're probably going to mess up and stutter, because it builds on each other. You're going to use the opposite of that. You're going to build on past positive speaking experiences. How do you do that? Well, certainly you can read aloud. That gets your muscles and your breathing working. You can memorize material like a recital, or memorize something from a play like a script, and you can recite that. Does the same thing. I like to use presentations. So what you want to do is create a presentation and you want to memorize it, and then you want to present it. Now, why do you do that? Because what it does is it builds those speaking muscles. It builds that experience. The more you speak fluently and confidently and smoothly, the more you'll be able to speak smoothly, fluently, and confidently. Someone says, well, yeah, if I'm practicing doing this and I can do it by myself, what about when I'm doing it in front of people? Well, the more you do it, and then maybe you go out and you do it for a small group. Right? If you've done it hundreds of times, you got it down packed, you're doing your affirmations, you go out, you may mess up a little bit, but nowhere near what you would have if you hadn't done that. Okay, so the more you go out and the more you do it, the more confidence you'll have and the more you'll be able to do it. The other thing that happens is you kind of, well, let me back up a little. The other thing that you want to do while you're practicing by yourself is you want to model someone. You want to find someone that you can model how they do it. And you want to actually take on some of those characteristics. Well, I like the way this guy uses his hands, or I don't like the way this guy uses his hands. I like the way this guy's rhythm or this lady's rhythm is. I like how their voice sounds, their cadence. I like how they move their head. I like how they hold their body when they're speaking. I like the intonations and fluctuations of their voice. Let me copy that. Let me practice that. Okay? So someone asks, well, what about coastal breathing? Or what about breathing? Or what about this? You won't even have to think about that. I'm not saying it's not effective. I'm sure it's extremely effective, but you won't need to think about it, because as you look at someone else and you start to model, so let me practice how they do that, and let me practice this alone. So you take on the persona, you're practicing speaking something that's exciting, you're taking on this persona, if you will, and you're practicing and you're speaking, and sooner or later you start to do it automatically. Makes sense? Start to do it automatically, and it starts to become more fluent. It starts to flow. You start to develop your own rhythm in speaking. If someone says, well, yeah, in presenting, what about daily conversation? I'm going to get to that in just a second. So by developing now this new speaking style, or what I call a new speaking you, what you're doing is you're creating this new memory of how you speak, this new belief of how you speak. Now, how does this translate into daily conversations? Simply, the more you speak, and the more you speak well, you practice the speaking, speaking itself becomes automatic. It becomes second nature, because you're using the same muscles and so forth, right? So it becomes automatic. So now, gradually, for some people, as you start to participate in regular conversations, you're not thinking as much about how you're going to speak, because you have more confidence in how you speak. You have more confidence in your ability to communicate. You feel more confident, you feel more smoother, you're able to speak more because you've been doing it hundreds and hundreds of times before. So what happens is this presentation you translates and transitions into the conversation you. And for some people it happens quickly, it happens automatically, and for others it takes longer. But it does happen because you're speaking. It's all speaking. Granted, they're not exactly the same, because one's more fluid, one you haven't practiced, right? I understand that. But still the same muscles, the same muscle memory, the same skills, breathing, using your mouth, using your rhythm, talking, all come into play and become second nature, and therefore translates and transitions into daily conversation. How long does it take? It depends. It depends on how often you speak, how often you practice speaking, how soon that becomes a permanent part of who you are. So for some people it happens quickly. For others it could take months, it could take a year. But so what? Let's say it takes you a year, right? Let's say your daily conversations suffer for a while, but you become an excellent presenter, and then a year later your daily conversations get better. Well, you've only invested now a year, 2 years, but now for the rest of your life you're a great conversationalist. Makes sense? So understand that up front. Take the time, use this approach, because it will translate into daily conversation. It just takes time. Once again, you can read aloud, you can recite something, you can rehearse and you can practice. What about singing? Singing can work, but the translation between how you sing and how you speak is a lot more difficult. The transition is a lot larger and wider. So some people say, well, I can sing, and I don't stutter, so singing may help, but more than likely speaking is a closer transition, it's a closer translation. Does that make sense? All right. Thank you very much for listening. Please watch this one over and over. That's why I went a little longer. I usually like to keep these around 6 minutes, 7 minutes, less than 6 minutes. This is a little longer because this is critical technique. This was technique number 3. We will be looking at technique number 4 in the next video. I'll see you there. This is Michael.